fears and releasing them and rising above them. Is that a good thing or what? You know, our co-founder, Charles Fillmore, I was really tickled when I read something he wrote because he uses Halloween language. And when I first found this, I was just tickled. Listen to this. He said, our minds are like a cauldron, and our thoughts cast spells, and we conjure up scary fears. Let me repeat that one more time. Our minds are like cauldrons. Our thoughts cast spells, conjure up scary fears. Wow. So I thought the best way to handle that today is with humor. And I have a warning. I've only got 3 jokes and they're really bad. I'm walking through my fear of being hit by tomatoes. So, but if you can I'll get through them real quick, and I promise there's only 3 and I won't do another one. So, number 1, why don't ghosts like rain on Halloween? It dampens their spirits. What do you get when you cross a vampire with a teacher? A lot of blood tests. Why didn't the skeleton dance at the party? He had no body to dance with. Okay, I'm done. So I walk through my fears, now you gotta walk through yours, okay? At some point, we have to walk through our fears. There's a wonderful old gospel song. The theology is probably a little different than ours. But it goes like this. It's called No Hiding Place, because you can't hide from your fears. They're going to show up if you ignore them. So the song goes like this. I went to the rock to hide my face, but the rock cried out, no, there's no hiding place down here. You can't hide from anything. Wherever you go, there you are, right? So repeat with me. Wherever I go, there I am. Together. Wherever I go, there I am. And if we keep suppressing that little shadow side of us, the fears and all that programming, if we try to suppress it, it comes out in what some call the dark night of the soul. And that was a term coined by St. John of the Cross when, after he was imprisoned and in a tiny cell with solitary confinement for such a long time that he ended up going within and having this great mystical spirit experience of divine light in his union with God and so on. So often good can come out of a dark night of the soul, and at some point we all have to walk through one. Been there, done that, paid my dues. And I just knew the scariest thing I could talk about today was our own dark night of the soul. Now, I have a trivia question. Which Beale said, it's all in my mind?
George.
George? Did somebody say, who said George? Very good, here. I believe it would. Michael Googled it before we came. We had trouble finding out because it's been quoted a lot. But, you know, he was a spiritual one, and metaphysically, it's all in our minds, and that's why we have to face it, walk through it, release it. Now, let me tell you what a dark night of the soul is and isn't. It is not a punishment from some man in the sky. It is not a punishment, but it is an opportunity to free our inner subconscious stuff, our fears and issues, and discover and awaken to the power within, to the real light that is in us. Now that sounds pretty good, doesn't it, even though it's called the dark night of the soul? And some common triggers, these are the most common, I'm sure there's other ones, are the first one is grief or loss. Anybody here ever lost a relationship, a job, income, health? Any loss can trigger one. The second one is sickness, in both mind, body, and spirit. Any kind of sickness can trigger a dark night of the soul. And the third one, my favorite, is forced change. Now, I'm a Gemini, I like change, but I don't like change when it's forced on me. I like to be in a little bit of control of that change, right? Anybody here ever been laid off from a job? All of a sudden had a sudden divorce or forced to move? That can trigger a dark night of the soul. Now, the good news is almost every dark night of the soul is followed by a transformation. Something in you is strengthened, some quality, and you become lighter and a higher consciousness, better than you've ever been before. your life is never the same again. Now, in spite of that, some try to escape it. And my favorite biblical story was Jonah, the story of Jonah and the whale. God called him to go to Nineveh and prophesied that if they didn't change their ways, they would be destroyed. Well, he didn't want to do that. It didn't sound like a real popular thing to do. So he ran in the opposite direction, got on a ship, and went as far as he could. But a storm came up on the ship, and the boat was being hit by waves, and the crew had somehow found out that he was running from his calling, and they thought that they were all being punished for it. So they did the only thing they could think of. They threw Jonah overboard, and he was swallowed by a whale. They figured it's his karma, not ours, right? Now that's a whale of a story. And the only way to interpret that story is metaphysically. What is that in me? Haven't we all run from a calling or run from our own shadow issues and our own issues, our fears? Anybody here avoiding anything, running from anything, not admitting something wrong? It can't be. We all do that. But you can't run from yourself or what's inside of you. There is no hiding place. Wherever you go, there you are. Repeat with me. Wherever I go, there I am. One more time. I like that. Wherever I go, there I am. There's nowhere to hide. Now, Jonah fell into victim consciousness. Anybody here ever fallen into victim consciousness? Come on. I know I have. You must have too. It was so bad, his victim consciousness. How bad was it? That even the whale couldn't stand him, and after 3 days he spit him out. After the whale spit him out, Jonah decided to follow his calling. He went to Nineveh and prophesied that they needed to change or they would be destroyed. And the people heard them and listened. And they changed and they were saved. Now you think he'd have been happy about that, but he got to thinking, if they weren't destroyed, nobody would ever believe his prophecies again, not realizing that that's what prophecies are for. So you follow them and bad things don't happen. Well, Jonah was one of the great whiners. The Old Testament is full of wonderful whiners. I really relate to them because I like my own 5-minute whine. I only allow 5 minutes, but I do take them. So here's his. Oh Lord, didn't I say before I left home this morning, this is just what you would do. That's why I did my best to run away. I love his delusional bragging about the fact that he ran away. Now then, Lord, let me die. I'm better off dead than alive. Oh, Lordy, Lordy. Jonah needed a little cheese with his wine. Anybody here ever done that? Wine? And felt like a victim? There's a wonderful book, and I think we have a few of them in the bookstore, by Robert Brummett, called Finding Yourself in Transition. And it talks about the 3 phases of change, especially when it's forced change. There's the ending, the void in the middle where you don't know what's going to happen next, and then the new beginning. And you have to embrace all 3. You can't say, I want to go from A to Z and avoid that middle stuff. And so even here at Unity, we're going through change with the sale of our building. And we want to tell you just a little this morning that we are under another contract. We've had a number of offers. And this one looks promising. You know, the last time we had an offer, we called a whole congregational meeting, and by the time you got here, they had backed out. So let's just say we'll know by next Sunday whether it's accepted, and we'll tell you more. If you want to hear more details, see a board member after the service. But for now, we just have to embrace the feelings that come up around that. This is like an ending in this beautiful space and all the wonderful things that have happened here. We have to honor any grief and feelings that may be coming up, not stifle them, but not build a condominium in them either. Acknowledge them, express them to release and let go, and then pour yourself in me, Holy Spirit. Pour yourself in me to lift us up. Because the next phase, when and if this goes through, is the void. And I know many of you are asking, well, now what are we going to do? Oops, you know? No, the board has all kinds of ideas they've been researching. You have a wonderful board that's researching everything and everything we need to do right now, and we will be informing you every step along the way as soon as we get something confirmed. But that void in our lives can be uncomfortable when you're in the middle and you don't know what to do or what's going to happen. Anybody ever feel like God has abandoned you? Haven't we all felt that? Like Jonah, we're in the whale whining, oh Lordy, Lordy, what have you done? And so we have to repeat after me, I release fears of abandonment. Together? I release fears of abandonment. God can abandon you. You are a part of God. It's not impossible to be abandoned. Repeat with me, I live, move, and have my being in the divine embrace. I live, move, and have my being in the divine embrace. And finally, all is provided in full and on time. Together, all is provided in full and on time. Now we can breathe in that void, because the next step is where we're headed, the new beginning. Better and lighter than ever. Jesus said, place your burdens on me. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. If you're feeling the burden, place that burden on the inner Christ and allow that spirit of the inner Christ to lift you higher and rise you up above it all. The way through change can sometimes feel like the dark night of the soul. And there's 3 types of people. Here's a quiz, see which one you are. We can be all 3 at different times in our lives. The first one is when these changes or dark night of the souls happen. The first type resists it, fights it, or runs away from it. Anybody relate to that one? You don't have to raise your hand. The second one is people that blame, complain, and project it on somebody else. Isn't that fun? I'm going to project it on you. The third one are those who accept it, embrace it, and go with it. If this is where the flow is taking us, we're going to go with the flow and know that that flow is the spirit of the divine taking us to a higher place. Now look at not just the church or our personal lives. Our country is in a dark night of the soul. And I'm not going to talk politics here, but there's so much division and separation thinking. Place the burden upon the inner Christ. Trust that no matter what happens, the inner Christ has a yoke that is easy and a burden that is light. Wherever we are, God is. Can you say that with me? Wherever we are, God is. Wherever we are, God is. That's one of my favorite short, one-size-fits-all affirmation. Wherever I am, God is. And yes, it's okay to acknowledge the discomfort, but then along with that, acknowledge that there's meaning in everything. And we have to face it and walk through it, all the while saying what? Wherever I am, God is. And then we have to explore new beliefs, new experiences, new higher thoughts and experiences. I know, I don't always like that either. It's like the caterpillar watching a butterfly fly by and saying they're never going to get me up in one of those things. But the dark night of the soul often lifts us up there. Like Jonah, if we don't resist, we're taken up to a higher place. Do you believe that? Do you trust it?
Yeah.
Let me finish with a reading from Science of Mind. You know, Science of Mind has a great magazine too, and they're very much in harmony with unity. When we remember this universal truth and look at events as opportunities to anchor deeper in spirit, we're able to move through conditions with grace. I would add grace and ease whenever I pray. I like to add with grace and ease. We always get to the other side of every experience. And when we do it through our center with spirit, we're able to witness spirit at work in our lives. And I'm going to stop there because I have to clear my throat. Brandon, would you come up and pray the closing prayer? Isn't it nice having an assistant minister? That's
Let's just take that all in, the wise words and the
Thank you, Spirit, for this day. Thank you, Spirit, for change. Thank you, Spirit, for peace through the change. Knowing that everything works out for my good, for our good, for the world's good. If it's not good, it's not done. Can we say that together? If it's not good, it's not done.